Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to the work session for the general fund budget of the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin. It's Monday, April 20th, 2026. We are live from Buckingham Presbyterian Church. Thank you to the church for allowing us to use the space this evening. First item on our agenda is the opening statement from the Mayor. What I want to say is thank you to all the department heads and staff, as well as the council, for coming together to look over the draft budget so far and working together to have the compilation that we have before us this evening. I appreciate the work on behalf of all the citizens of Berlin. I know that a lot goes into this. Each year we start with a substantial wish list and deficit. We have worked diligently to whittle that down among all the staff to be able to make sure that what we have before us this evening are the nuts and bolts of what we need to move forward for FY27. With that being said, we still have some work to do, which is why we're here this evening for the work session. We have quite a busy agenda before us this evening, so I really don't have much more to say. We'll get right into the Berlin Fire Company and Berlin Fire Company EMS fiscal year 27 request. You guys can stay there. You move to the table. It's pretty close. President David Fitzgerald and Chief Andy Grummond. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. I assume meeting tonight? Drill tonight. Okay. Ah, very nice. Well, thank you for joining us and working us into the schedule.
The chief says, thanks for having us here so we can present the annual needs of the fire company and emergency medical service. So we'll start with the fire company. Just going to paraphrase the cover letter. This is our cost for services for the next fiscal year. And as you know from doing the semi-annual report, the chief goes through this numbers, 40% of the calls for fire and rescue are in the town limits. We're providing that service with about 50 or 60 volunteers, supplementing from the EMS career staff, and this budget is for fire and rescue services. So we are asking for an increase if you go to page 2. For operators, just as for you at home and here with the town, things are going up. So increase in the operating budget to $219,350, $219,350. Through, starting at the top, as we usually do. Our revenue, we get donations, that's our annual drive of people who graciously donate to us. As we mentioned before, as time changes over the years, people do send us notes that they are not willing to donate. They believe this should be funded by government funds. So there's fluctuations year to year in our donations. Fundraisers, the chief has talked extensively, as well as myself and Andy Captain, about our recruitment and retention. Fundraisers, basically we're down to the event parking and the hall rental. The hall rentals have gone down. Nobody really, people are more for destination weddings and things like that. They're outside, their cars are not coming to a banquet hall at the firehouse. So we, minimal rentals. We have more rentals at the conference center. That's something unique to the town that can benefit to the community. Have a smaller facility, 50 to 60 people. So we see those numbers pretty steady. Given the fundraisers, I saw an interesting anecdote on Facebook this weekend, and I don't want to offend Mr. Charles. It was an anecdote and a nice little graphic that another town fire company presented that said, hey, when the town needs a new bulldozer or something, they fund it. When it seems like the fire company asks for something, the first thing somebody says, we'll go raise funds for it. So we're not trying to give you a smart answer, but the fundraising is the recruitment and retention. We need our personnel to be available to respond on calls, not requesting them to come work for 14, 15 hours barbecuing chicken, and then responding on calls. Again, just trying to be very open and honest with our answers. The county grant will go up. As we've discussed before, that is based on tax assessments. So as assessments go up, that goes up, and of course that assists us in our funding. Every to operate that building. That's got a couple large expenditures in it this year. We replaced our boiler, if you recall, our boiler and our roof a few years ago. And when we did the boiler, we just did the boiler itself. Walk in the boiler room, monstrosity of a machine. But we didn't replace any valves, any pumps, any of the heat units that are hanging from the ceiling. So we are finding we're having emergency repairs to these. So it's been recommended. The ones in the older building are 1965, they're original to that building. So we certainly got our money's worth out of them. And the addition building, 1991, we certainly got our money out of those. So that is about a $50,000 repair. If you ride by the fire station and look at the first door closest to the north on the outside, you'll see some concrete pads that are coming up. Those are 12 inches thick, so they have to be jackhammered out and replaced before we'll get to the point where that first door will become inoperative. That will disintegrate. These trucks are very heavy, nothing we can do about it. Those two just seem to have had a failure of some sort, and we're probably looking, large expenditure there. Guys, only roughly $20,000. We got to jackhammer all that out, 12 inches thick. If they need more, we might be able to quote, but got that estimated in the budget. Insurance, looking probably 15% increase in insurance. We are not like at home, and just like government, you're kind of tied down. There's only two companies in the United States that do emergency services. The one we've been with for quite some time, and we asked the other one about pricing, and they just said they were not interested in new customers at this time. So I've got a pretty aggressive underwriting review in progress, hopefully curve from that 15%. Meeting, talking to the underwriters, making sure they explain our operations totally, making sure they know we're not putting the hull as much, so we don't have liability of spares or alcohol. Chief engineer going through things with drivers and vehicles, just to make sure we're buttoned up tight as we can be to show that underwriter their risk is as low as it can be for responding on 400 fire rescue calls a year. The office supplies, they're what they are. What's also in that account looks high. We're not buying $40,000 worth of envelopes. That's our postage. That's all our computer maintenance, just like you have a company that maintains your computers. Our computers and firewalls are essential. We're dealing with patients' medical records. We've got to make sure everything we've got is protected, that type of thing. So that is in that budget as well. Professional fees, they are mainly our attorney and our accountant. While they do both very nice to us and provide discounts, that's only really when they're working on stuff. When their staff is, they're paying their staff, and they're doing our monthly reconciliation, they're doing our annual reports that we get, filing our taxes that are available if we need attorney advice, contracts, etc. Communications, that's our radios and pages, radios provided by the county. This is mainly our 100% our pages that we use. Fire prevention, in the second category I mentioned with fire companies and apparatus and vehicles. We'll talk about the capital a little bit. This is the operating. This is the routine maintenance. This is the repair maintenance. This is the fuel, all the required things that we have to do, the inspections each year. We're also very aggressive with our maintenance. Our chief engineer has a company come in every 6 months, also review them, so they have to pick up a lot of things where they catch the action of the item before it gets to be a repair that would be twice amount. So we're very proactive on our preventive maintenance. We are required to change our tires. Doesn't matter if we get 2 miles on them, comes to a certain year, because the emergency they have to be replaced. Fire equipment supplies and fire equipment repairs. But that's again, most of that category is required maintenance. Somebody come inspect our ladders, somebody come inspect our hose, our rescue tools. They all have to be inspected and maintained yearly for readiness of response and for warranty and safety of our members. The volunteer incentives and physicals, we curtailed that somewhat with our banquet, but we still have things that we do for our members. We got 50 to 60, depending on what we have on the roll, unpaid personnel. So we do have incentives, just such as a simple thing. Meal after our meeting once a month. People come here at 6:30, they don't have time to eat, things like that. The other do what the chief is asking them to do when they respond in our training. So that's our fire operations budget. We've got a couple other pages here this year.
Dave, can I just ask a question?
You do.
Since we're back on the operating budget, can you just, I think you brushed on it, but can you clarify again, please, for me, for us, the occupancy? Now that is basic, that is just building.
So that is building, that's, utilities, so I can tell you about $75,000, $70,000 is utilities, electric bill, sewer bill, water bill, gas bill, just utilities, telephone. And then you've got, all of our maintenance contracts, so we have we have exterminator that comes, we have, people that come every quarter, make sure our garage doors work, that are maintaining, numerous maintenance contracts, boiler maintenance, heater maintenance.
Is that all three of your bills?
Yes. And the majority of that expense is at headquarters because, yeah, Station 2 is a small building and Station 3 is still relatively new.
And don't forget, you have 4 humans living 24/7 in the uptown building. So, if something breaks there, it's got to be fixed right now, not like we can do without. Some stuff you can do without, but the reality is if something breaks unexpectedly, we cannot wait for repair, which means you're gonna pay what you're gonna pay for immediate repair.
Thank you.
And that's why we're so proactive in all our maintenance, have all these maintenance contracts. So again, it doesn't get out of sight, out of mind. Somebody's listed these people, when they sign up in July, they come July, October, January, April, and do the maintenance that they're supposed to do. So we have a letter, as we do every year for the capital funding, just to kind of do a little refresher. Back from fiscal year '08 to 2012, we were receiving $342,000 a year, 200 of that to operating and 142 to capital. And then in 2015 and 16, there was 150,000 provided, 2017, 60, 2018, 126, and then nothing until we got a one-time capital allocation out of the American Rescue Act funds.
I do want to correct that. That's a contradictory statement. Since that time, no other capital funding was provided except a one-time allocation. I think that it would be prudent to add that in the description for future years, or if you present this later, that shows what that ARPA contribution from the town was. I think that would be wise.
And then our request remains at $150,000 per year for capital apparatus. So we have an apparatus loan payment, $200,000 each year. That won't be paid off until 2037. Those $200,000 payments are consistent until 2036, and a final payment of $75,000 change. The loan is to pay for the engine that's in service and the rescue that'll be in service. It's replacing a 37-year-old engine and a 27-year-old rescue, and we use our out-of-town runs to pay for this payment. Unfortunately, if you do the math, when this loan is paid in full, the other engine is going to be 39 years old. So that's a long time. So we're requesting to go back and look as we've done, starting back in '08, to review and reinstate those capital funds each year. And then we're asking for an allocation, special capital allocation of $400,000, so we can take 2 payments ahead, shorten the life of the loan, and also reduce the amount of interest to be paid. It's interesting to note, from your all's records, and we provide our records, from 2021 to 2025, you guys are anywhere between 2.9 million, 2.1, 3.2, 4.8, 3.6 million of unassigned funds. Your budget's exceeding revenues by $1 million each year. Getting right from your financial statement, last year was $1,025,000. Year before that was $2,029,000. Year before that, $2,093,000. Year before that, $1,005,000. We turn in our financials to you, those same years, we were negative $86,000, negative $53,000. 2024, 114 to the good, and that was just cash flow from waiting for the air tax to a negative in 2024 redone. And then in 2008, we were requested by the mayor and administration at that time, please don't do those surprises to us. Please, let's put that in the budget so you all can maintain your budget. So we dwindled away from that, from 2008 to 2016, pretty well did that. But we are making a special request, of the 400,000, pay 2 forward payments for fire company.
So let me, sorry, just for clarity then for me, or what, I keep saying that, for us, excuse me. So as tonight's request, right now is fire ops of 219,350,
Correct?
fire capital of 150,000. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and then the, I'll just call it the loan payment of 400,000.
Special request of one-time payment of 400,000, pay that down. Which we haven't been getting, capital in the past, except for, Mayor and I said the ARPA funds.
What was the ARPA payment that we did? I think it was
138, I think.
138?
Yeah, 138 for the fire, EMS got some too, I believe it was 138 for the fire.
45 for the, I thought it was 180 something for ARPA. All right, so when was that payment made? Do you know? Was it last fiscal year or the fiscal year before? I think it was 25.
I think I had that with me.
I just want to note, that your request for the $400,000 in town funds to forward pay the 2 payments, of $400,000 is close to equal to our current working deficit of the budget, just so that we're all on the same page. And then when we look at the years that you mentioned in the audit with the carry forward of funds, it's not uncommon for us, Natalie, you correct me if I'm wrong, when you see that, we may have moved a larger project or a couple bigger projects into a carry forward status for the future fiscal year. Is that correct, Natalie?
We can refer to the auditor's comment that every year surplus is due to non-completed capital projects and they've been carried forward, and not because our revenues exceeded the expenses, particular to capital projects.
So each one of those is like a deferred capital project. It doesn't go away, it's still there. But just so that the public's aware and you all are aware as well. And then, can you point me to the $200,000 debt service payment in the budget? Because when I look at apparatus vehicle, I see 100,000 and then it increases to 107,000 for FY '27. Where's the debt service?
That's in the capital budget that we gave you back in December.
But so the way, I think it would be helpful for us to see, like when we present a budget, you'll notice that our budget includes debt service payments. I think that it helps us get a more holistic picture of what's going on if debt service is included in the budget that's presented. Wouldn't you agree, Natalie?
That should be that way, the debt service is a separate line item.
Dave,
Is there?
you talked about, another town and their request, and the reply they got was raise funds, or something like that?
Yeah,
If you have ever, or if your organization has ever perceived that as a reply to your request from this council, I just want to say that I personally apologize. And at no means and at no time has that reply ever been expressed by this council. And if it is being perceived that way, I'm sorry. And it is not intended to be perceived that way.
And I sincerely thank you for your comments, and I'll make sure they're relayed back to the fire company.
Thank you, Dave.
Oh, you're very welcome.
While we're staying on capital, during our last work session together, I had asked if we could break out some of your capital requests for the upcoming fiscal year. Do you have that information?
Yep, we are working on depreciation schedule. I've got
I'm talking more like, hey, look, we need, you've used the example of like rope and other things. Like Like, if you have a list of things that you are tackling and are must-haves for this year, it'd be helpful for us to see that.
Yeah, we can bring back up the December report, yes, sir.
Including the 400,000 one time, as expressed today, your total request is $769,350.
For the fire company.
Yes, fire company.
And then the last page, just wanted to summarize our great discussion that we had during the work session. We talked about the $1,000 rebate for the volunteers for recruitment and retention. I'll just summarize the letter. We did make this, the Worcester County Fire Association made the same presentation to the county commissioners relating to a property tax credit or rebate. And then the last paragraph, I did verify over the weekend, there are 18, as the number I presented before, there are 18 eligible volunteer members. Mayor and Council at the work session asked about considering the 1 or 2 years, we do have one additional person who lives in town, their name is on the tax record, that has 2 years of service, so that would be 19 if you want to consider something a little different to the state or county, very 3 years of service. So those numbers would be 18 and 19.
Thank you for providing. How many of the 18, because you said the 19th person has 2 years of service, how many years of service, or how many of the 18 members have more than 5 years of service?
I don't know,
Can you get that?
I'd have to look it over for them, over 5.
Over 5 years. 5 years or
5 or more.
5 or more. And we haven't lost sight of this.
Yep, I'll go through each sheet. Ready to move on to the email?
Your next report, Dave.
Got, what I got right here, I don't think there's extra, I don't think Stickles is here, so that would be.
You need an extra flyer.
And the.
I think I would suggest also before the meeting, we would get the reports and maybe have a couple available for public, because people would like to use the same numbers as we talk about.
Proceed.
Got one for now.
Well, there should be this. We could make a copy of it and put it in your box.
Second for the fire, so already.
While he's doing that, circling back to the fundraising stuff, Councilman Norris, actually the whole council brought up a lot of good ideas for fundraising. And I meditated on that a little while, and I want to sort of echo a point I've made before, and one that President Fitzgerald just made. Fundraising takes time, and some of the other things we do drive donations, like during fire prevention. I won't sit here and say on camera that I dress up in a dog suit for 8 hours, but if I was gonna dress up in a dog suit for 8 hours, at the end of the day, it's hot. But that exposure being out there, people see that, people realize we're out there doing it, and that probably realistically drives some donations. But at the end of that day, it's over for me. A lot of those fundraising events are like that as well. They're more successful on warm days, weekends, stuff like that. So we're at, I don't wanna say we're at a crossroads, but we're approaching the reality of, do we wanna have a really good fundraising operation, or do we wanna have an emergency services operation? And we're getting to the point where you can't do both. One or the other is going to have to be reined back in, if not lose what we should have. And it's always gonna be, the emergency services come first. That's what we're here for. So, if it seems like we're just casting aside the ideas, they're all good ideas, we consider them all, but from a standpoint of time management of the people who volunteer, we're kind of, like I said, we're at a point, we have the volume and we have the length of a call where we can do one, we can do the other, and we can do one or the other quite well, but we can't do both.
Thanks for, thank you.
So for the EMS, the cover letter is the same as we sent, we just updated. You all realize that, 60%, approximately 60% of the calls from the semi-annual report that the EMS captain provides are within the corporate town limits. But we're still staffing with two crews, 2 paramedics and 2 EMT EMTs, nothing's changed. We have mentioned to you that we still have 3 ambulances in service. However, we've kept our oldest ambulance, because of our calls, and again, what the EMS captain shows you when he does his report about simultaneous calls. We've kept that 4th ambulance so that it can be quickly put back in service when something has to do for an oil change or maintenance or repairs. So we still operate 3 ambulances, we still have 2 paramedics and 2 EMTs. We have EMS employee supervisor is a paramedic level person that are Monday through Friday. And everybody, as you recall, they're all cross-trained, so they support the fire company as required, as needed. As we said before we get into budget numbers, this year it's 91.90%, so 91%, 92% of our budget is personnel. That's what it takes to operate up there. There is hardly any volunteer EMS anymore. We do have members, including 2 of us up here, to keep our EMS certification. It's mainly for those third calls, or when they're in desperate need of extra set of hands, we're trained to provide that extra set of hands. But the time and availability of providing this is done by our career staff. So we are asking this year for an increase on the operating of to $499,000. So if you go to page 2, we start at the top, their donations, and that's the general donations or the mail that we mail out. And as people read that, they determine whether they want to participate in that program and donate to us and not have to worry about any co-payments or deductibles. The next part is the invoices. Again, you see we've increased it in the budget. That's based on trends. We do have very aggressive billing and collection agency going on. We do have to be cautious about this. And again, our billing company reminded me of this about a month ago, and I was aware of it, but they're prudent in that. We've got to watch as we see that go up, because there is a 3% to 12% increase in Medicare that's temporary. It expired, and President Trump put it in through Congress, a bill, and that expires 12/31 of 2027. So the moral of that story is, you see the billing go up, we gotta be cautious about, especially tying that to our personnel. What happens if that doesn't get renewed in 2027, and we're paying payroll with that? So we have to be cautious of that 3%, 12%, and it varies by call. It's how the Medicare does it, but it's a supplement. It's called a rural supplement. You can Google it, but it does expire in 12/31 of 2027 unless Congress renews it. It's specific to Medicare payments to the ambulance.
So Dave, not to interrupt, but so that payment, is that that's on the federal fiscal year schedule, right?
It expires, no, it's paid with each person's bill. If you're on Medicare and whatever they punch in the computer, depending on where you live, they add a supplement to it. That's gonna go away according to current federal laws, 12/31 of 2027. And it's hard to tell what that number is because you don't know where you're responding to, and nobody can really sometimes figure out what Medicare put on that call for you.
Dave, what's your percentage of bad debt or uncollectible invoices?
So we run about 25 to 30% of going to collection agency. Uncollectible, probably about 20% of uncollectible. Yeah.
Pretty high.
Yeah, it is high, and that's nationwide. It's people, they're not gonna pay it, we can't cut the service off, they know that. They have no insurance, they have nothing because our collections agency goes to court with them, there's nothing that the court can attach wages to do, and we do have wage attachments going on. But, you know, it takes forever to get that paid
So how
off.
many days before we turn it over to a collection?
So 120 to 150 days in the dues collection agency. It depends, and the reason I say between 120 and 150, if they're working with a billing company, or they've got an insurance appeal, or a Medicare appeal, or a Medicaid appeal pending, we don't send them to a collection agency because they're still work in progress on the bill. You know, between 120 and 150 days, when the billing company says this is all we can do, it goes to the collection agency.
And the collection agency, I assume, takes 50%?
Actually, they don't take anything. We have a very good agreement with them. Their fees are added on top of our bill.
So passing the
They're passing the fee through. We have a very good relationship with our collection agency. Any court costs and attorney fees, or their commissions, if you will, are above what ours will. So that's the reason we work that way. Some invoices, county grant, that's by the formula that we've talked about before, the in and out of town runs, the number of ambulances we have, the number of employees we have, and then our operational request. And that's about, if you do the math, that's about 20% of the budget. Again, we're running about 60% of the calls, in town. Our banking interest, we moved that up significantly. We have our retiree health insurance account stuff that is there, and we're putting money away for when our personnel retire, and that's generating some interest now that we are, putting some funds away for that. So we have other post-employment benefits like anybody else has, and we started to put some money away for that. We've had to, we promised that to the employees. So the medical supplies, we've been very fortunate, to stay within the budget there. Our office supplies and computers is the same for, explained for the fire company. It's not only office supplies, and looks, postage, what have you, is our computers. Again, all this stuff has to be secured. Every ambulance has a tablet and a laptop in the back. Yeah, an hotspot. So all that comes out of that budget. And then professional fees, slightly higher for the EMS because there's more detail with all the billing, things like that, accounting that we have to look over. Also, when you have personnel, you have it in any business that you run, you have legal fees with personnel, you have to get some attorney advice once in a while, so it's slightly higher than the fire company. As you see, the big number over $2.2 million, for the EMS, that is, added that supervisory position. We must have to, you see it on the bold print or underlined on your first letter, we must continue to maintain our step scale systems. We've shared those with you, because I think the town is going through the same, processes, because we've got to retain those employees. The cost of living, step scale, I pull my hair out weekly, continuing to watch what the other companies do, report to the employment committees, and I see people changing pay scales, pay rates, and the employment committee, work diligently to make sure we stay competitive. We are, I don't know what the town's looking at, we're looking at probably a 15% increase, in our healthcare insurance. So, again, that's at all cost. We try to maintain that 90-10 and 70-30 split for our employees, because again, that's retainment of the employees, recruitment of new employees.
Were you able to fill your vacant positions?
We still have 2 vacant paramedic positions, so we actively recruit. That's another thing in the budget we have to look at. If someone's coming with a great amount of experience, can we afford to bring them at an adjusted pay rate within our step system? And I have,
We pay the market rate.
What is your market rate for like a paramedic?
So $26.50 and $21.50. I think $21.50 for EMT, $26.50 for paramedic.
And is that what you pay for part-time and for your new?
Part-time, we actually pay part-time a little higher. People say, why do you do that? Because, in that, the employees have about, full-time people have anywhere between $12 to $17 an hour in benefits that you don't have with the part-time people. So we adjust the hourly rate just slightly higher. And again, it's a recruitment tool to try to get the part-timers in here. The full-timers, as you see in the cover letter, we've had 3 vacancies for almost a year. Just got that for part-time.
What do you got approximately for part-time? Because you get a view of the county, right? As a whole.
23 and 27, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be.
Dave, I just got another question. On your EMS invoicing, you're showing an increase, of course, on your budget. Are you anticipating more volume, or is that because you're charging them?
That's because we're actually charging more. It's again, the aggressiveness of this billing company. They got in their groove. I think we're in year 4 now. They understand more of the processes here, and, again, it's to the collection agency too as well. The collection agency, and then have gotten in a good groove, and it's just increased. We haven't raised our rates, and it is, what you said, it's callback as well. Callback.
Dave, it seems that this budget is projected to increase $300,000, right around. And of that $300,000 increase, you are asking the town to fund $15,000.
More than that. There's 15, 75, and 100.
No, that's correct, because we don't ask for what we don't need. So, because you see what the county's going up, yeah, the county's going up almost $300,000, you see that?
I saw that.
1309.
Yeah.
So again, we're not here, that just proves that we're not asking for what we don't need. The county is taking the majority of this brunt.
You know, we want it to be equitable.
Yeah. Again, that just shows that, we don't ask for what we need. That's a good point.
So is the additional 15,000, because, I don't know, the 484 includes a personnel allocation. Obviously, so the 15,000 from, on the sheet, from 484 to 499, is the 15,000, that wasn't really clear in the letter to me, was it ops or
That's the
personnel?
operating unit.
So that's, so the 15 is for
The
ops.
first sentence, attached to the document, is town board with EMS operating budget at $499. Very first sentence.
I apologize.
And the capital budget is,
So, all right, just to recap, because I think I was confused by Vice President Burrell's statement, but I see a $15,000 increase on your revenue side, request for the town grant, right? And then I see $15,000 request of the 3-year commitment from LDC funds to the town provider. And then the $75,000 capital funding, what's that for? Plan for future budgets?
you wanna finish the operating and jump to capital, or you want me to jump to capital?
That was related to operating.
Yeah, 15 was operating, yeah.
All right. I can make.
Okay. So the rest of the operating is training, volunteer incentives, again, that's part of our volunteer personnel, go along with the building, as the chief said, we gotta make sure that the facilities are adequate for people spending the night, only 472, 4 people there. The majority of that's front through the fire company budget, there is things to the bunker and things like that that are charged with the Emergency Medical Services Corporation. The medical equipment maintenance repair, that is, driven by, again, 95% of that number is routine maintenance, part monitors that need to be maintained, stretchers, stair chairs, things like that, breathing machines, CPAP, and then a small amount in there to be something that would break down. That's 95% driven by service contracts. Insurance, as we said before, by looking at a 15% increase in insurance. And then the vehicle expenses, as you see, the budget was 55,000, we're already at 64 this year. So we increased it to 65,500. Diesel fuels, $5 a gallon now, so that's gonna come down. But the age of the vehicles, we still have, two vehicles, 27, 29, 2017, 2019, so need to be replaced. So they're, as they get up to that 8, 9, and 10 years of age, they do start having maintenance things. So the next page on the capital, yes, we're in year 3 of the $15,000 a year commitment. Yes, that continue, and then, again, the 15,000 we have requested year after year, the $75,000, and that's the spreadsheet that we give you back in December. That goes to the ambulance fund and those other items that are going to need to be replaced down the road, like heart monitors and what have you. And we'll refresh that and get that up here to you, for the December 2025 report. But we are requesting a special request of $100,000 for the EMS that will help us pay off our current loan. That loan is about $45,000 for the ambulance we just received, so we're going to pay that off now. And then we've got to order, as soon as they get done the punch list and everything gets done on the 2025, we have to get our order, we've got to get into order queue for the 2029 ambulance, and there's always a deposit that has to be paid. That deposit is a percentage based on what the total cost will be. So once they project the total cost of 2029 ambulance, spot on their manufacturing schedule in 2029. And they told us we better do that pretty soon. And we had to do that. So it's not unique to that. We had to do that for the 2027 year as well. Because these manufacturers.
Yeah, they're starting to experience lead times like fire manufacturers, which is 48 months.
We're sitting here with,
I'm sure bucket trucks and stuff like that.
anything with hydraulic.
So everybody's we're all feeling that pain together as a group.
So the cost goes up and the lead time, like,
Yep, so we are asking again, for a one-time, so it's a $500,000 one-time request, 400 for fire and 100 for EMS to assist us in capital, all in capital, to push us along. Because as we brought to your attention before, we really do have to sit down with the county and the town to look at the next replacement cycle, because it's at current funding, it's not financially feasible. We don't wanna lose, we gotta get through this budget, everybody's gotta get going, but we have to keep that on our radar and work together as a team between our billing, the county and the town to make sure, 10 years from now, we're still able to thrive.
Yeah, and if you fall out of line with replacement cycles like this, it becomes, you miss a step, you miss a second step, you miss a third step. Trying to catch back up becomes a nightmare, an expensive nightmare at that. So we're marching through a schedule, but if you drop one, the time playing pick up, catch up, and trying to get back a fleet that is serviceable and responsible, you're spending $2.50 for every $1 you should have spent before.
Dave, I need clarification on the paragraph that starts with, we are requesting $75,000 of capital funding to be planned for future budgets. Can you,
Yes, that's the request, that's the numbers that we've been given for the past, 3, 4, 5 years. That's the number that we give to you in December, where we show what the ambulances cost. We also show the cardiac monitors and the stair chairs, we should be putting away. We get that 75,000 from the county now, 75 from the town will allow us to continue to put that money away. So when an ambulance needs to be ordered, or another heart monitor, or those capital pieces, that goes into that fund.
how many years of 75,000 would need to be put away
That would be,
to address the purchase of that?
we've run that numbers for 10 years, so that would just be a constant budget.
Could be in perpetuity.
In perpetuity. But it would go up probably at some point, but we would give you the numbers on that spreadsheet, 10 years. You've asked for 5, but we do it for 10. The reason we do it for 10 is because the ambulances are 10 years, so it makes sense to do the whole schedule for 10.
And you're asking for the special request of $100,000 to pay off the $45,000 that remains.
And then to have the balance of the funds will be toward the deposit for 2029.
I think you made it.
Can we go back to your, budget for a second? So you have 2 vacancies that have remained in your personnel that's for over a year now. Are you seeing that anywhere else in the county, or is Berlin unique?
Ocean City, Kokomo, Snow Hills had vacancies, longer than we have.
Okay. And so the county itself is facing.
It's a systemic problem, which you're
You
gonna
can
see
talk
with,
across the bridge.
yeah, it's systemic everywhere. But what you're gonna see with Salisbury, and who knows what happens, they sort of stepped on a rake they had to step on. So the fallout of that's gonna be, it's not gonna bring prices down for anything. Basically, all the departments around, forgive me for saying that, we're all sharpening our knives for when they start to pull back their pay, which I think is going to come. We will be actively fishing in that pond, along with the Quad County area.
But the challenge is like the number of skilled personnel, and then everybody's compete, that supply is down.
Yeah, there's
And
10
the
people
demand
for 12
remains.
spots, so and they're running the market completely, which is why we also will negotiate for commensurate experience. It makes us appealing, but if you're a good employee with a solid track record that we know we can depend on when you get in the door, we don't have to worry about you. for that, saves a lot of money down the road. And it gives it, it makes us look better, frankly, so that word of mouth gets out. Hey, if you're a good employee for a good amount of time, go play ball.
$26 per hour is better than like Ocean City,
Regionally, yeah. We're all usually sniping at one another within a dollar. And the problem is once one person does it, then somebody else does it before, you know what I mean? But again, the prospective employee is driving the market. The employer is not. So they are firmly in control. And for the foreseeable future. There may come a time when, when AI replaces all of us, that becomes an attractive job. And you'll go back to something that when I got hired, there was 100 of us for 10 spots. Maybe that dynamic comes back, maybe it doesn't. But for right now, for the foreseeable future, like I said, for the next decade, no way. Just not happening.
And the biggest thing, I just pulled my phone up because I took a screenshot of Ocean City's ad that went out today. That's why it's so critical that we keep our steps on our COLA. And that's why you see our budget increase, because now other departments are also advertising that. For example, in Ocean City's ad, it tells the potential applicant, you're gonna get a 5% step in July, you're gonna get a 3% additional in January 2027. It tells them what you're doing, so that's why we can't fall behind in our step and grade scale, because if we do, as the chief said, the word will get out, hey, you go to Berlin, they might tell you they got some step and grade scale, but we're not getting it in July. They talk a good game, they got a nice chart, but they're not doing it. That's what would occur if we fail to do that, to, number one, retain what we got, but also word of mouth to recruit these positions. But not to belabor the point, but just give you more education or more knowledge. As the mayor said, the paramedic classes they're putting out 10 to 11 people who are going to get ready to graduate next year. Those people already have jobs lined up. And from what I understand, 3/4 of those jobs are across the board. Because again, 8 days a month for 1.5 times what we're paying on the shore, they're going to go there and work. So we've got to really stay good with our pay rate and our benefits, Can't forget about our benefits, so that person makes a decision. Quality of life thing's going to be driving 2 hours or 4 hours to work both ways or one way, 8 days a month. I'll just stay here. In 10 minutes, I'll be home.
What is the COLA that you guys are given this year?
I'm sorry.
What's the COLA? you're given?
3%.
And then each one of your steps is equal to,
Is different. You have to look at the scale.
Oh,
It could be
yeah.
5, 3, 2.5, 1.5.
It's more of a compression model.
It's a compression model to get, again, it's modeled after, getting the people in the door, giving them raises aggressively, so that especially if they're a young person, and they're starting a family, they're getting some aggressive raises, and then they're leveling off after that. Still getting raises, but just not quite as high percent.
It allows us to set the hook and new employee and keep them.
And your healthcare program that you offer, is it like a high deductible plan or is it full coverage?
It's a full coverage, no high deductible. We tried that, and that became a recruitment and retention issue. So we're on a full plan. We do a 90-10 split for individuals, and 70-30 split for families.
The idea is to the extent we're able, we will come to a paramedic's house and roll with a red carpet, right to the.
all right, if there's not anything else?
I used to have a supervisor that talked about first impressions. And one of the first impressions an organization makes is by the stationery it uses. And I just want to say to you all that I'm very impressed with the weight of the stationery. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
The next meeting, we'll have a heavy card stock.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I'm very impressed.
All right, up next.
We want to come here and put the board.
This is very expensive paper.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Up next, we have, I still call it Atlantic Smith Crawford dealing, but dealing insurance, and it does say Zach Hall. What's that?
I'm just looking at my,
It does
thinking
say,
it's 50 cars, it's second D.
yeah, one digital, sorry, but Chris, here, I'll come back. When Kelsey said we don't get Zach, we get Chris, I said, well, just one of these.
Sorry about that.
Don't say it like that, it's like we don't. You don't like it.
I'm glad if it works, I'm good. Thank you.
Hey,
All right.
what's it?
Let's kick it off. We have the presentation in front of us. Go ahead and hit us with the part numbers.
Can I run
Go ahead.
through something quick? So, first off, good evening, everyone. Many of you already know, but yes, this is Chris Carroll with One Digital. He and I connected earlier today. We got the renewal late in the day on Friday. I actually received it after hours Friday, so we didn't have a chance to really connect until today for an initial review, but we don't want to delay bringing it forward because this renewal includes the loyalty credit, which is where we determine, do we want to go out to market, or do we, and seek alternatives, or do we want to stick with the renewal we have today, retain that credit, and then if we do go out to market, we have to recognize that we have a risk there because we might not get a better rate, and then we're gonna have a change for our employees and stuff. So from an employee standpoint, maintaining coverage with CareFirst would be ideal. And then if the renewal had remained at the initial rate, prior to Chris and his team negotiating a more favorable position, we definitely wouldn't be making the recommendation we are tonight. But, I appreciate their efforts in helping us achieve a better outcome every year. So, I do want to note too that I did not, due to timing, I haven't updated the budget spreadsheet, so I don't have, those specific figures for the budget at this time, those impacts, because what they have in here tonight is a monthly rate, but it's a snapshot in time of what our current enrollments are. When I budget, I'm budgeting for all vacancies, I'm budgeting for, family changes, if I know someone's having a child and they're gonna switch to a family plan. So, what you're gonna see tonight is a monthly rate, but with our current levels. So I'm not comfortable giving you a ballpark of how much that's changing until we kind of get more into it. But what we would look for at the end of this is a consensus from you guys on whether we want to lock in and then we can vote on it at a meeting, or do we want to go out to market and see if we can get a more favorable rate from someone else. And then our open enrollment is going to be on May 20th. And yeah, other than that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Chris. You all have this in front of you. Sorry we don't have it for the public, sorry we don't have it on the screen, but we're working with what we got tonight, so.
Kelsey, what did you initially budget for? What
We
percentage?
had 12% in the budget, yeah. And then no change to the HRA, we left that at 0%, 0% change.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everyone again. From my standpoint, as we evaluate kind of the cost of the medical, that's the major driver, and that's the one we'll spend the most time on this evening. We look at basically three components. The first component is the premium that we pay to the insurance company. Today, that's CareFirst, Blue Cross Blue Shield. The second component is our internal deductible funding that we call a health reimbursement arrangement, or an HRA. And then the third component is the opposite of a cost. It's a savings. How much do we share that cost with the employees? That's the employee's payroll deductions. So premium goes out the door to a third party. Claims are based on a projection, and we'll let you know how we're doing with those projections. And then the third is the deductions that we take from the employees. So we add those up together to get the total impact. As Kelsey said earlier, that's blended out in the internal budget at forecasting at 12%. That's a conservative trend that doesn't budget against a bad thing happening, but it says if the standard marketplace does what it does, that would be adequate. Happy to share that we'll be recommending a renewal with CareFirst that's more favorable than that, considerably more favorable, and I'll go through each of those components one at a time. I'd like to start with the raw numbers first and our recommendation, and then work backwards into how we got there. So we are going to recommend accepting an early renewal with CareFirst. We'll show you some other alternative strategies that we think if we were changing carriers, we would actually recommend a wholesale change from a traditional group to an ICRA. That's why we're kind of jumping from the front to the end. And that we'll share the results of that as we go through. The second is the impact to the employer blended. That's a combination of that premium, including the HRA maintaining the same deductible level funding that we have today with the employee, meaning their gap or what they share would stay the same. And then also considering keeping the employee's payroll deductions identical to what they're paying today. When we add those factors up together, we're looking at a 7.19% difference in budget year over year. As Kelsey said, that's not adjusted for volumes, that's a snapshot in time, but they should hold up regardless of how volumes go up or down as the factors drive that. As we indicated, that's not making any changes to the employees. If we look at the first insert, you'll see two columns in the lower right-hand corner. One is the premium increase that's based on the 3.99% premium increase. Two, it's based on an HRA budget increase of 14.44%. Three, an employee deduction increase at 0% to blend into the 7.19. Put the employee payroll deductions in red because that's just a stagnant or a constant for this conversation. Accepting a renewal with CareFirst is not conditional upon keeping the payroll deductions identical, so that lever still could be changed. Secondarily to that, your health reimbursement arrangements. We are recommending buying a slightly higher deductible with CareFirst. That's why you're seeing an increase in the HRA utilization to go from a stagnant 0 to a 14.45. We're recommending taking more risk on the deductible. Same as with the employee payroll deductions, that number is adjustable too. So if we want to pass more cost on to the employee or expose them to greater risk at the hospital, lab, and pharmacy, we can do that. That lever is not is independent of accepting the 3.99% renewal increase from CareFirst. CareFirst did give us the default identical benefits, wouldn't have to change the HRA at a net at 10%. That was first released at 15.7 and change, negotiated at 10. So those are that's kind of the room that we've gotten ourselves into with CareFirst. The next several pages I'll build into how we got there, but just pausing for a second and see if we had any initial questions based on the overview.
I think we're good.
Good, awesome. All right, so the next slide, which is listed as alternate 2, drives those numbers mathematically to the roll-up. So I will point out one number in the lower right-hand corner. That's 6.32% because you won't see that anywhere in the summary. 6.32% is the actual increase of premium plus HRA at projections. Why we are budgeting higher than that at 7.19% is because we, under this assumption, fix the employee's cost at 0 change. So if the employees stay at 0 and the employer goes up 7.19 and you blend those together, that's how we get to the 6.32 actual increase year over year. Next 2 pages, we start going into the historical, how we built into that. Starts with the CareFirst medical renewal just as a transition. And in the lower right-hand corner of the initial renewal, you see that CareFirst did release the renewal at 15.77% increase. That's the first element, the premium component. 1% of that, as Kelsey discussed earlier, is part of that early renewal. The other is just a concession based on loyalty and based on an ability to try to lock the renewal in early. And they adjusted on the next page to that 10%. So the 10% is a real number, nothing changing in the benefits, all the logos stay the same, all the strategy stays exactly the same. The lower half of the page shows you the employee cost share, the payroll deduction per pay, based on employee, spouse, children, and family. And the bottom half shows how the deductible is shared between the health reimbursement arrangement and the employee. You have a very robust health benefit plan. First $4,500 for a single, first $9,000 for a family of the deductible is absorbed by the health reimbursement arrangement. There's a donut hole or a gap in benefits, which we also refer to as a delayed deductible. We stole that donut hole from old Medicare, so that's not a term, I can't take credit for that. So that deductible or donut hole is the employee's share that happens in the middle, $500 for an employee, no more than $1,000 per family. And then the remaining portions of what we call the max out of pocket. That's the amount that the carrier will charge, whether it's co-insurance or co-pays, anything for any covered services where they share the cost with the employee. There's a taxi meter running in the background that could add up to another $3,000 in costs. Our health reimbursement plan also absorbs that. We're able to do that because the health reimbursement arrangement is a promise to pay, but we are spending at a much lower rate than we're actually promising to pay those benefits. So the town is acting as a deep pocket, picking up on budget 55% of the deductible, picking up on budget 20% of the out-of-pocket maximum, and we are spending under that at a rate of about 80% versus budget. So we're able to do so much because of the plan design you put in place, and your dollars are going further because the utilization rate is supporting that. Next page is that utilization history over the next few years, over the past few years. We mentioned this specifically because anytime we recommend changing the HRA utilization strategy, so we're going to talk about a higher deductible here in a moment, we want to kind of give some confidence that our budgeting has been pretty stable over the past few years because we're obviously asking you to take more risk. As you look at this sheet, I'll point out the lower right-hand corners again. The 2023 policy year complete and 2024 policy year complete were projected at a cost of $198,000 and $206,000 respectively, and we are running at 66 to 69% of budget. So we have done well even versus budget. Budget's not nearly 100%, and then from there we're also running well. Under the current year, we are running at actual spend at $167,000 in change at the point that this report was pulled. That was pulled at date March 23rd, so it's a little dated at this point. But we mature it out very conservatively to say the year has to end, and we have 3 months of run out that could incur claims incurred but not yet paid, reported but not yet paid. We mature that out to $238,000, which is still running at 79.2% of budget. So the HRA has done well. It's done its job. Because it's done its job, we're going to also recommend paying less in premium and letting the HRA do even a little bit more in 2026 policy year. Lower right-hand corner, that is the taking more risk. So you can see that the current plan is built on a $5,000 deductible, but it's built on an $8,000 max out-of-pocket chassis. Highlighted in blue will be any major changes, and the big thing that you'll see is the deductible will increase from $5,000 to $7,000, but the max out-of-pocket does not change. CareFirst is giving us slightly greater than 6% savings in premium to take $2,000 more in deductible risk, but not incurring any additional max out-of-pocket risk. We think that this is the most favorable offer of what's in the equation based on what the HRA utilization has been historically.
So hold on, let's pause.
Yep.
I'm understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, that up here where you have the 6.32%, that's the recommendation,
Yes.
right? So then the slide that we're on currently showing a 3.99% overall increase would be more of a savings?
No, this is inclusive of the 6.32. It is the premium element.
Okay, I got
So the premium is going to go up almost 4, but I'm going to have the HRA utilization go up 14, and then it weighs out.
I got you. Thank you.
And then as we go to that next slide, that 6.32 rolls it up. And if we take a look at the columns, I'm going to follow the first current column. So we basically have 4 operative columns. The first column is the Maryland current and then the Maryland renewal. The next is the Delaware current and the Delaware renewal. When you follow down the current column, you'll see that there's a $4,500 deductible spend. If you look to the right under renewal, I am recommending increasing that to $6,500. That's where we're going to get an increase in HRA cost, even though we have a favorable result on the premium. As we come down to the co-insurance limit, you can see current is at $3,000, and that's going to go down to $1,000 because the max out of pocket didn't move. So even though we took more deductible risk, we took less co-insurance risk because the max stayed the same. And then when we roll all those costs up together, it's premium plus HRA for deductible, plus HRA for max out of pocket, and that number blends to 6.32%. Lower right-hand corner takes the same identical strategy, but says our employees' payroll deduction is for a single individual $23.64 per pay. If we keep that fixed and the employee's cost is 0% increase, that 6.32% increase is borne 100% by the town, which pushes our budget from 6.32 if we were sharing it pro rata to 7.19 because we absorbed the employee's share as well. And that's completely optional. It's just our recommendation as a starting point. We kind of put that pin in the pegboard, and then you can make modifications from there as you see fit. And that is both the recommendation and the math that brought us there.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris or Kelsey so far, before we go over the report?
Can I just confirm that, so with the employees not seeing a change with the increase, it would be, I was correct here. The increase would be 7.19%, correct?
To the town.
Yeah, with the employees not having to pay for any of the increase. If we pass it on, that's the 6.32.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a pretty good history here of not passing on those increases, and I think it's a big benefit that we offer to the town employees, but I know we're not there yet, but I just think that's a point just for savings of less than a percentage point to pass on, where people see a change in their take home when we're talking about increases to the step and COLA. I mean, I like personally prefer us not to take more from the employees, as we have done in recent years.
And you will see as we move on, there was an increase to dental, so employees will be absorbing that. There was a decrease to vision, but a slight increase to.
Did they take those alternate?
Yes, yeah.
Kelsey, was 7.19, is the premium at the same as 5,000 and, what's that number, 9,000?
No, that 7.19 is adjusting the HRA utilization, it would be going up. So that's why we want that weighted average. It was a 14 point, from the first slide, it's a 3.99% on the insurance premiums, and then that health reimbursement would be going up 14.45% with the weighted average of 7.19. Basically, for us taking more of the risk, CareFirst said we'll bring your renewal down to 3.99%, so we're saving 6% by doing that.
I guess that, I was asking, the deductible, the reaching deductible, so if the employee.
The
reaches
employee's
donut-
share of the deductible will stay the
Yeah,
same.
the same, five.
Yeah, the donut hole is the gap, stays the same. There's actually a slight enhancement if you think about it, because it happens later.
Yeah,
Right.
So instead of happening at $4,501, it'll happen at $6,501. So the employee actually has less risk, but the total aggregate risk is identical. So if I had a $100,000 hospital stay as an employee, I'll be out of pocket $500. If my spouse had the same, we'll be out of pocket $1,000. That will be identical from year to year.
Makes sense? All right, if you don't mind.
Sure. And then the ICHRA is an alternate model. ICHRA stands for Individual Coverage Health Reimbursement Arrangement. It's effectively a hybrid arrangement. They are calendar year policies, so everything that we look at would be a short plan year for 2026, renewing January 1st of 2027. And basically what it works on is the same carriers that offer traditional plans offer individual coverages in the individual marketplace. Effectively, we buy one insurance contract that has 64 certificates underneath of it. We would buy 64 individual certificates of insurance and roll them up into one administrative platform. In doing so, we have a favorable rating in comparison to our traditional group rate. That's inclusive of administration, it's inclusive of claims, but it is projected in terms of what the January 27 rates are, because those we don't have. So we have to make some assumptions as to what they are. From a premium and overall cost standpoint, we could build an identical plan for the employees at about a 9.45% decrease versus current. That's our best projections for the 18-month period of time, being the last 6 months of 2026. And and the projected cost for 2027. There are some challenges to individual coverage HRA. We usually lose between 5 and 8% of the cost from the employer's column to the employee's column. The reason why, it is not a 4-tier rate. Every employee will have their own rate based on their own family dynamics. And if we are paying on average, let's say 90% of the rate, the 10% that a 25-year-old pays versus the 10% that a 64-year-old pays will be very different. A family of 64-year-old with a 63-year-old spouse with some children that are of college age is a different family than a 29-year-old with a 28-year-old with a newborn. So there is some loss of control there, and when you try to normalize that and make the employee's impact equal, at least not unfavorable, as you move from traditional group to ICHRA, you generally, as the employer, have to spend a bit more on some of those outlier demographic families. The other aspect of this is anyone who is of Medicare age would need to use Medicare as primary. It's not optional in the individual marketplace because it's a hybrid. It's built on the individual chassis. That's not necessarily bad per se, it's just different, and different can sometimes feel as a negative. So we always have to be careful of that. There is probably the last.
Are you saying that someone would have to sign up?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying that someone would have to sign up for Part B?
They would.
Medicare?
Obviously, we would guide them and help them through that process. We spend a lot of time educating consumers about Medicare, so we would do that very close with them. But it does have its, it does lose an aspect of its paternal and maternal nature of a traditional group plan when you say now it's all riding on the individual market and feels a little bit disjointed. We try to make it as close as possible, but that is some of the deficiencies. The other deficiency is CareFirst is probably our second, and we love CareFirst, but CareFirst is probably our second least favorable enrollment system for individuals in the country. There are 504 rating areas plus Medicare, we call it 505 rating areas, and CareFirst has not made a commitment to their enrollment platform because it's on the wish list of other upgrades, and they are struggling with some group chassis integrations right now. So if we can delay giving serious consideration to ICHRA until that CareFirst individual marketplace is a little better at enrolling bodies, it would cause a lot less stress for our employees.
So tell me why we're looking at this now.
I'm sorry?
I can help you with
We've
that.
had requests.
I ask every year for them to put it in, because
I don't
if
want
they're,
It's good math.
well, I ask every year for it to go in because it's important for us to get familiar with the terminology, because if we have a huge
We'll
fluctuation,
transition to that.
we would go to that.
in
So
time.
just like the financials, when Natalie includes all the other stuff, it's more so that the public and everybody gets used to hearing it in the event that we need to pull it up.
It's a great safety net, and we get it earlier than we get the renewal, so we do the math ahead of time, so we kind of create a ceiling, if we would. We have a worst case scenario going into it. It's got more heavy lifting, but at least it's financially a stabilizer.
So would this be something, sorry. So, so this ICHRA conversation, could this be something that we might visit in mid-year instead of having it again?
Not really, because the reason that we're looking at it is if we get a high fluctuation, let's say we budgeted what again? 12. Let's say it comes in at 20 for the sake of the argument. Then we would seriously have to consider the administrative burden and all the hurdles that Chris just went over about entering into an ICHRA. But correct me if I'm wrong, that's a mid-year. We would have to enter into that in January as opposed to a fiscal year. Okay. So that's why I said.
Yeah, which becomes challenging with budgeting because you'd be budgeting mid-year for something. It's just it's not ideal. And like you said, it is 64, 65 individual plans instead of one big group health plan. And I think that becomes challenging too in helping employees with their plan because everyone's plan is going to be a little different. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's like you said, it's a safety net, but it's not something we're recommending right now.
Speaking of that, can we get consensus to move forward with the 7.19%, which is the original recommendation?
You can get consensus to move
We'll
forward
action
with
that.
including it in the budget.
But what we'll do is we'll add it as an action item for the All right, let's move on to dental and vision if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So dental consistency in terms of carrier and plan design, there is a market increase that CareFirst has applied to the dental. To be candid, we kind of used our negotiation juice on the medical, we kind of focused on that as a cost driver, especially because a 5% increase on dental translates to less than $2 a month, or, you know, approximately.
I think the max was $6, and the cheapest was about a $2 increase for each employee, so.
So we felt
$2
like,
to $3 per paycheck.
Yeah.
so if we look at it that way, somewhere between $1 and $3 per pay, between a single and a family for dental, everything else staying as consistent and favorable as it was. We thought that was the recommendation for consistency.
Never mind, this is option.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you guys, last year did, start incorporating, which I think's on the next slide, a $25 a month contribution for those that elected, because those rates were getting a little high in comparison to what we were seeing with other organizations, so.
And the recommendations to keep
To
that
keep
flat.
that, yes.
Okay. So no changes to the town budget for dental. The vision, we have effectively a rate hold there, so no changes in benefits or cost for vision. And then there is a slight early renewal credit, so by accepting the medical early, it actually results in a few cents, I mean, literally 7 cents.
Save 3 cents a pay.
Hey, 3 cents is 3 cents.
Exactly.
So, the group okay with keeping those current, plans as presented? Yes. Move on to this is another one of the things that we're not saying to act on this year, but definitely want to get it in front of everybody. We've done this before. When was the last time you ran the numbers on?
I mean, we've been kind of looking at it
Yeah,
over the last 6
Yeah,
months
but
or
like-
so, but it's been years.
It's been a couple years since we shared it.
From
We look at it probably every 6 months.
So this is a continuous request that we get as an additional benefit from staff. You heard it with the Berlin Fire Company EMS. They're doing that, this exact thing right here, providing retiree healthcare coverage for the gap between retirement and Medicare kicking in. So go ahead and hit us with the numbers.
Yeah, so basically, there's a lot of projection within this because the retiree population, you have to make a couple assumptions. The first assumption is you come up with a strategy, generally something like a minimum of 20 years of service and a minimum age factor. So whether that age factor is 50 or 55, 55 seems to be the most logical if you were going to provide a maximum of a 10-year benefit, because based on current today, Medicare age, normal Social Security retirement Medicare age is 65. That can change, that's federally driven. There's some discussions about it being younger, there's some discussions about it being older. So we could easily see Medicare move to 62, we could easily see it move to 67. So it's kind of a moving target. But from a budgeting standpoint, a couple different strategies, a monthly contribution maximum. We just put some raw numbers together to give you a flavor for what it would look like. Under the current year, if you had 20 years of service and age 50 and a maximum monthly contribution to help offset any premium that an individual would have to purchase, what we would expect is most people would be buying an individual coverage policy through the ACA. They would likely getting an advanced premium tax credit, and then yours would act as a supplement to that. You have to disclose it. Any dollars that they get, they have to put into the equation. So it gets watered down a little bit, but it's definitely better than not having it. So from that standpoint, if that was the case, there could be as many as 12 eligible people as of January of 2027. It is unlikely that all 12 people, just based on that $350, are going to say, okay, that was the tipping point on how to hear. But, you know, so that's the maximum cost versus the projected cost. So we looked at it and said, okay, well, a 10-year exposure on all 12 people would be $504,000. But if 20% of the people utilized it and said, yeah, I'm in, 2 point however many people, that budget over their 10-year life cycle would be $100,800. And that would basically constitute how you structured it, whether or not you had to create a reserve for that, or whether you would instead use more of a year-to-year contribution model that said it's based on availability and based on budget. So you can come up with a plan design that either is a promise to pay, that's obviously more favorable to the employee, that's what they would prefer, or you could create something that says this is our policy and this is the budget that we're establishing for 27 or 27 to 28, and look at it as a rolling several years. As we looked outward and we said, okay, as the population moves on, in 2032, at the 5-year mark, you're now up to potentially as many as 20 people being eligible for that criteria. And if you initiated the policy at that time and got the same 20% utilization, you're looking at $168,000 liability for that population. So it really is a bit of a dartboard. If we were being conservative and wanted to walk into it, we could establish a retiree budget and then work backwards into that budget to say, these are the maximum funds that are available, and those maximum funds have both a monthly maximum and a per participant maximum. So it basically says, if we have a $20,000 a year budget to fund towards retirement, and there's only one person that wants it, and their maximum is $500 a month, it would be a $6,000 expense. That person would be capping their max and not getting near our max. So there's the ability to kind of put two layers in place. And we only gave you this just as a framework to kind of put it in your brains and your discussions internally to say, how do we realistically bring this into operation? From my standpoint, you would want to stay away from making 10-year commitments to budgets that need to be in a reserve and in an individual trust, because that liability would get very heavy very quick, versus something that is more budget friendly from the standpoint of establishing parameters that are more flexible to what the future might drive.
And we did look at the cost to actually add them to the current health insurance, and I mean, it was astronomical, which is why we ended up looking at like a monthly fixed rate instead of having them remain on the town's plan, because it's just not feasible. So we're not even gonna present that because it's not something we can afford to do, so.
The math in the short term is bad. The underwriting model in the long term is disastrous. I mean, you basically would be kicking your plan to ICRA almost instantly.
So if we wanted to embark on this at some point, how would we tackle adopting a plan like this that does protect the town's liability?
Yep.
I know you talked about a whole bunch of stuff there, but can you concise
Yeah,
that into a couple
condense it,
manageable
you
points?
say, basically, from my perspective, the operation of it would be to say, is there a palette to set a 5-year budget? And if there is, we would
Just for
work
this
back-
item,
For this item.
just for this line?
Yeah, and then once you establish a 5-year budget for this item, that's, 5 years is relatively predictable. You can say, okay, well, we have a 5-year budget for this, let's work backwards into it, taking into consideration the maturity of the population who might go into it. This is a small enough population, it's relatively predictable,
Right.
And then from that path, work backwards to say, okay, well, how do we put parameters in place to make sure we stay within that budget? And then that basically determines how generous the program can be in terms of its monthly maximum allocation.
So if there's an appetite by the group to want to explore it further, could you put something like that together for us?
Absolutely.
That we could then start to look at? I'm not saying, maybe it's something we have to enter into this budget year or something, but at least then we don't lose sight of the work.
Since it's a set dollar amount, we could really kind of do it whenever we wanted to
Absolutely.
anyways, so.
Is there an appetite by the group to explore this further or shelve it?
I would never turn down more information to make a decision.
I will say, I expressed that one of my concerns is I do not want to make a commitment to people. People retire with that commitment in mind, and then in 2 years say we don't have any money. Sorry, we can't continue this, because not that they're relying on that $350 a month, but they might be relying on that $350 a month. And if we're making a commitment, I just want to make sure we can fund it. So
Versus going out to the open market, it makes a difference.
yeah. So
I
I
like
just.
how Chris structured it, like a
Yes.
5-year commitment, and
That's,
then you
I think
kind of.
having some sort of plan,
Re-upping it
yeah.
each year, yeah.
And I will say,
maybe
Worcester
you'll
County has
roll
said
it
that
up.
it's been a challenge to keep up with their retiree healthcare. Stacy said it's been, she said, I don't know that I would set it up the exact same way we had,
if it's something we embarked on. Reasonably, if you hit a point where you're saying, okay, hey, look, we can't make our year 5 commitment, that gives somebody 5 years to figure it out, which I think is a long enough horizon.
But by this stage, at this point, you talk about commitment to employees, we're just trying to see.
Correct. Yeah.
We're exploring.
Yeah, just exploring the wrong impression.
You're just starting the
We
conversation.
don't want to send that.
Like Jack said, we're looking for more information.
Makes sense.
But I think that I like the 5-year rolling model.
Okay.
It provides the out in the event that the expenditure increases more than what we would like in a given year. It provides safety along the way.
You know, at some point we end up in a universal healthcare or something like that, could be winding it down over 5 years. So it could be on either side. But yeah, happy to share that information.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Chris or Kelsey regarding the presentation?
Do you have a clear idea of how you're gonna plug numbers into the budget?
Yeah.
For
I'll have to update the HRA costs, that we've them broken out separately, so I'll update the HRA costs, update the renewal costs, and then put them all in. Yes.
And then we'll polish it again after the renewal, because we'll have a better picture, who's a family, who's single, who's
Right.
gotten child experience.
Yeah.
And we just got this information on Friday.
I got it Friday, but like I said, we
Well,
were.
if you
wanted to
had it
push
3
out.
weeks, my goodness, where would we be?
Well, it's always tricky because we have to get CareFirst first, and then we have to decide what we want to do. But if we have to go back out to market, we got to move quick because that takes time. You know, the enrollment's in May, so they're always on top of it, and I'm very grateful that we have them to assist us. So.
Until Zach can get to that, I know he put a lot of work.
Yes, yeah, Kevin and Amanda are definitely our team.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
All right, up next, we're gonna move on to, overview of general fund revenue. You good?
Glad to be used to that.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead. I sat for a
Do it, yeah, why don't we take 5 minutes, stretch your legs. When you need water, you need your facility. One more left, if you're smart, you get it. I'm great on time. I was looking around for a cushion.
There's a few more back here. There's Brian's using this one back here. There's 2 more back here.
I mean, 10 minutes we'll go over everything we did in the meeting the other day.
The iterations of it all.
You want to transfer
Right now. So, insurance day is expensive. It's a month for you and your wife. And it's a little bit different. We don't have the donor concept, but our deductible is no, they don't. They just offer it at their rate.
Yeah. You know how much?
Okay. Yeah.
The
Bike to
school for
Sergeant Collins and we were in the meeting together.
Oh.
You want to step back here?
You reckon that we're breaking, or actually, here, hold on, one second.
Yeah. Okay, but like, well, I'm just saying that. That's good. Did you? Yeah. I'm not. That's actually what I call it. Yeah. Maybe I should tell them.